HGT Discovery Kids, and welcome back to GNN, where every week we keep you informed on what God is teaching us in His Word. I'm Miss Jessica.
And I'm Mr. Hattie. And today we're talking about one of the most important people in the whole Bible. He's the man that God called to set apart from the rest of the nations spreading across the earth to create His own people. The people God would use to tell His story. Do you know who He is?
I know, pick me.
Miss Jessica, do you know who it is?
Abraham.
That's right. Well, that's almost right. Abraham was the name that God would give him when He gave him His covenant and promise. But when God called him, the man's name was Abram.
Oh, that's right. Abram and Sarai lived in the city of Ur, and God called them to go to a foreign land and trust Him in all that they did.
Right. God set Abram apart and spoke to him like a friend. Abram had a special relationship with God and was led by God to the land of Canaan with his family and his flocks. There, the Lord made a covenant with him and promised him that He would make him a great nation and that the land of Canaan would be given to Abram and his family.
God changed his name from Abram, which means exalted father, to Abraham, which means father of a multitude. This was very interesting to Abram because he and his wife Sarai could not have kids. But God knew the miracles He would perform in Abram's life long before He did them, and He knew that the name He gave Abram was the right one.
God called Abram Abraham, and He called Sarai Sarah. God promised to make the descendants like the stars of the sky and the sands on the shore, even though they were old and didn't even have one child yet. Scriptures tell us that Abraham believed God's words and God credited him with righteousness. Abraham and his children would be marked by how well they trusted the word of God when the nations around them did not.
That's right. And from this point in God's story until the very end, we follow the family of Abraham and watch what God did to show us more of Himself and bring us back to Him. We're going to learn more about this now in the verse of the week with Mr. Hattie.
Thanks, Miss Jessica. This week's verse is found in Genesis chapter 15, verses 5 and 6. And it says, "And He brought him outside and said, 'Look toward heaven and number the stars, if you're able to number them.' Then He said to him, 'So shall your offspring be.' And he believed the Lord, and He counted it to him as righteousness." Abram was a special man, not because he was the strongest or the fastest or the wisest. Abram was special because when God spoke, he believed Him. God saw this in Abram and blessed him. He changed his name to Abraham, father of a multitude, and promised to bless his descendants. God told Abraham that all the families of the earth would be blessed through him. We know that Jesus is a descendant of Abraham and that through Him we're all saved and blessed by God. So take some time today to thank God for His faithful promises and for the sacrificial love of Jesus. Well, that's all for the verse of the week, and now to our animal segment of the week with Miss Jessica.
Thanks, Mr. Hattie. This week's animal is found all across America and seen in large flocks flying in the air like a school of fish in the sea. Do you know what it is? If you said the European starling, you're right. The European starling is not native to the United States. Just like Abram, it came from a foreign land and was introduced to these lands. Also like Abram, it did very well once it was introduced. You can now find these birds in the millions all across America. They are small black birds with yellow beaks and speckled shiny feathers. Sometimes you can see them flying around in the air as one big organism or sitting in the trees and singing like a stadium full of tiny birds. Keep an eye out for these beautiful little birds, and when you see them, remember God's promise to Abraham and thank God for His faithfulness to keep His promises to us. Well, that's all for the animal of the week, and now back to our newsroom.
Well, that wraps up things for us here on the Gospel News Network. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again right here next week. God bless you, and remember, be blessed.
And be a blessing.